Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the top 10 best Blast characters of 2023 as decided by you and me. Here's how this is going to work. It's fairly straightforward, but there are a few very delicate working parts, so you have to bear with me here. We are going to vote over the next 7 days for the top 10 Blast types. Don't worry, we'll do Combat Speed and Universal as well. We'll get there, but we're going to start with Blast. And essentially how this live voting works is it's a little bit quirky. They only allowed me to do a maximum of 10 rows, and if anyone at TierMaker is watching this video, you should certainly add the ability to add 5 more rows at least, because, you know, top 15s exist, or at least having an unranked, 11th row would be very, very helpful. But essentially how this is going to work for our intents and purposes is that each color, besides 10, corresponds to only one character, and that character is going to be chosen by you. Now, I have chosen, or I have sort of narrowed the field down to the last 26, the latest 26 Blast type characters. So if you don't see one of the 26, like if one of these characters is not among your top 10, or if there's one of your top 10 that isn't among these characters, I apologize, but I genuinely don't think that they're in the meta relevantly compared to all of these. So basically what you're going to do is when you see a character, you're going to say to yourself, hey, what rank do I think they exist in the game when compared to all other Blast types? We're just comparing within the class, okay? So if you think Adam Warlock is the #1 best Blast type, then you click the red button. I'm not going to click it because I don't think so, but that's what I would do if I did. And if you think he is the 9th best, you click this button right here, this dark blue button here. And it basically corresponds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here, and then 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, the one quirk besides that is that for the 10th, the pink one, everyone else that you don't think deserves to be on the list is actually going to have to go into 10. Okay? So you can do this voting one of two ways. You can either select the character you want and vote carefully one by one. And so, for example, I think Iceman is #1. I'm going to click this. I think Riri #2. I'm going to click this. I think Strife is #3. Right? You can do that. And then when you get to 10, you would just press one character there, and then you'd be done, and you'd submit your thing. Or what you can do is you can rank your top 10. We can just quickly do an example here. You could rank your top 10. Like this, and then for the remaining characters, if you don't want to finish submitting, then for the remaining characters that you don't think, the remaining 16 that for your opinion aren't in the top 10, you would just spam vote them into rank 10, and then whoever is at the very front of rank 10 is who I'm going to consider the final winner. So in this case, let's say this is how the vote ended up, right? We'll just go through and vote everybody else in. Then I would be like, okay, Strife is the community's rank, the global rank 10, and let's say these characters all made it as the global rank 1 through 9, then that would be what they do, okay? But please don't put any other characters in rank 1 through 9 because it's one rank per, and there's no way of adding an 11th row to this tier maker. So here we go with a fresh list. I will now rank the top 10 best Blast types in the game in MFF right now, as per my opinion, and then I'll leave it to you folks to go ahead and do your own ranking of the top 10. Starting it off with Adam Warlock here, I think he's certainly in a top 3 scenario for PvP. He has some PvE value, but really not that much. Blast male heroes, unless they're mutants, don't really have a lot of value for ABX, ABL. Not too fast for GBR. So, although he is very, very good for PvP, PvP rewards right now don't really justify their investment as much as PvE. So, with that in consideration, I think he deserves a top 3 selection, but nowhere higher up than top 3 in my opinion. Ancient One, that's tough. Ancient One, I think, is top 10 here. There's quite a few supports that I want to mention. There's like Ancient One, Riri Williams, Enchantress, and I feel really bad that I didn't put Enchantress on my uniform buying guide because I think she has a very good support uniform. The interesting thing for Ancient One is the support stuff is not quite as strong as someone like Riri or Enchantress, but what Ancient One does have is the Reflect and the iframes and the invisibility, which are useful for PvP as an actual character. So I think her overall value although she has less support value and less leadership value, her PvP value is so much higher than Riri and Enchantress and other supports that I certainly think she deserves a list in the top 10, like a ranking on the top 10, and I think she also deserves to be actually 9th. So I'm going to put her at 9th. But my list is a little bit quirky. I agree, because I'm not just ranking it based on their damage. Like, there's other factors that I'm considering, and I'm also considering how useful they are in the current meta. So although Blue Dragon is not that useful in the current meta, and she certainly sees less adoption and usage than other characters because of how expensive she is, she's still very good as a two-way character. Two-way character being you slap her, so not slap her, you give her, you slap on her a mighty or a brilliant destruction, and she can do PvE content and PvP content. Now, she's not going to dominate either, right? Like, she's not as good as Adam for PvP content. She's not as good as Sharon or others for PvE content, but she's still very, very strong. And she can get access to a revive from Sunbird. She has a counterattack with iframe ignore. I think people oftentimes underestimate and forget her overall kit. It's very, very strong. So I actually think in terms of usefulness, she's 5th. Okay, let me put it this way. In terms of usefulness, I think she's 5th. But in terms of her actual... In terms of her actual usage, I think she's 5th. In terms of what her kit represents, I think she's actually 4th. So I'll rank her 5th here. I may be overstating her PvP value a little bit, but I do think that she is also sort of underrated. Cable, I think, is fantastic. The best blast mutant hero, which is kind of a niche category, but he did replace Professor X after just a couple of months, so you can't really deny his value there. Very, very strong for all PvE content. He's available for many, many World Boss stages because of his combination of leadership and Weapon Master. Super powerful. Gets access to the full host of buffs. Yada, yada, yada. So I think Cable is number 2. And I think Cable is also number 2 because of the recent reward buffs to ABX and ABL. And I think if it wasn't for that, he probably would be top 3, and then Adam would be much higher. So yeah, I do consider that to be very heavily influencing these lists, for me at least. Cyclops, I don't think he's a top 10 contender. I think his support's overhyped. Doctor Strange, that's a tough one. I think he's good. I think Doctor Strange is certainly good, but the problem is essentially he doesn't have anywhere to shine, right? I think he's very good for GBR. I think he's solid for World Boss. He got a VPAD skill. He's got extra survivability, which is certainly nice. But it's not enough to propel him into the meta, and also the meta right now doesn't really respect what he does as a just blast male hero. So I think he's actually 7th, and I think his ranking is going to pretty accurately describe why other tier 4s are not on the list at all. So keep that in mind before you start hating on me later on. Emma, I don't think is a top 10 contender. Enchantress would be on the list if I had access to more. I was supposed to rank my 10th pick earlier. I messed that up. Anyways, Enchantress would be my 10th pick. Riri is actually my 10th pick, my number 10. So I goofed up my list, but Riri should be here in front of Cyclops and Emma Frost, and then Enchantress should be right behind Riri. So that's how it should look. It should go Riri 10th, and then Enchantress like 10B, and then everybody else after her. But, it is what it is. I think Riri and Enchantress are both amazing support characters. Riri has a better leadership for like World Boss stuff. Enchantress has a bit more of a flexible leadership, I believe, for like dispatch and stuff like that with the debuff effect. But yeah, they're both fantastic supports, and they certainly are used a lot, so their usage sort of justifies them in the top 10 situation. Iceman, not a top 10 contender. Iron Man, okay, so this is basically what it comes down to. In terms of just pure damage, if I was just ranking based on pure damage, then yeah, Iron Man would be top 10 for sure, but then I wouldn't have any supports in the top 10 either, right? I wouldn't have Ancient One, I wouldn't have Riri, I wouldn't have Enchantress. I'm not basing it just on damage, right? I'm basing it on other factors as well, like utility and things like that. So because of that, and because Iron Man is basically just he's basically Doctor Strange or slightly worse, it just doesn't make sense. Like, sure, I could put him at 8th, but we already have Doctor Strange there, and they fill like literally the exact same categories. So yeah, I don't think he's a top 10 contender. Magic honestly deserves a rework. Her uniform, for being a paywall seasonal, is not good. It's not. It's not good, unfortunately. It's like AC only, which is kind of embarrassing. Certainly deserves a rework. Either a rework to her existing uniform, just to bring value to players who bought it, or a new uniform that's not paywall, so that players can finally get the justice they deserve. Magneto, on the other hand, as a seasonal, I think he's number one. I think he's number one, and I'll explain why here. Basically, Magneto is, and he has had a lock now on the Blast Mutant Villain, or just like Blast Villain. He's had a lock on the Blast Villain category now for a year. And along with Jean, Magneto is the only other character where there's a massive gap between first place and second place for ABX and ABL. And what that basically means is, with all of the other days, right? Like, sure, Luna's the best speed hero female, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Loki's the best universal alien, sure. But the second place character, Thanos for Loki, you know, Spider-Gwen for Luna, they're not that far away. But if you look at Jean, there's no universal female who touches Jean, right? Who touches, especially universal female villain. There's nobody. Captain Marvel comes close as just a universal female, but even then, it's not that close compared to what Jean is. Just insane. And then the same thing goes for Magneto, right? Who is the second best Blast villain? Yeah, it takes some time, right? Because you're like, what? There is no second Blast villain. Mysterio, right? MODOK, like there's certainly not Malekith. He's certainly not top 10. Certainly not top 10. Certainly not top 10, right? So that's basically what it comes down to. He just has such a stranglehold on his typing, and he has one of the easiest rotations to play, which is another huge plus. It's unfortunate that it's a seasonal uniform, but I think it's a no-brainer. I think everyone needs to pick him up this month because he's just absolutely insane value. Polaris, unfortunately, despite having good leadership and support, I don't think she's a top 10 contender. As much as I would like to rank Professor X in the top 10, I don't think he's top 10 worthy, basically because Cable's just a better version. Sort of like Doctor Strange is a better version of Iron Man, Cable's just a better version of Professor X. So he just, you know, it doesn't make sense to put them both on the list. It's kind of redundant. Sharon, on the other hand, so Sharon, Blue Dragon is kind of like a better version of Sharon. She's a little bit harder to play. She has much less value before tier 4, but then she has much more PvP value. So it's kind of an interesting combination. I do think Sharon deserves to be ranked just based on the sheer amount of damage she does. She just does so much damage. It's actually just crazy. So I'm actually going to rank her 6th just because of how much of a damage stick she is. She's just a nuclear bomb. Sister Grimm doesn't deserve to be ranked. Neither does Spectrum or Spider-Woman. If it weren't for Odin, I would rank Star-Lord, but I don't rank him. And then we come to Storm. I actually struggled. My original list didn't include Storm in the top 10, but then I realized I was being a hypocrite because of all the things that I said about Magneto. Storm has had a lock on Blast female mutants for over a year. So if Magneto is a year, Storm is over a year. The issue I have with Storm, and why she's not number 1, even though she's had a lock on it for longer, is that her ceiling is much lower. So whereas Magneto can cap ABX and he can hit like, he hits close to 12 million or over 12 million ABL, which means he gets you all of the rewards. Storm doesn't do that, right? Storm doesn't do that. I think the best Storm players are probably hitting like 10, 11 million, but I don't even think they're hitting 12 million. So her ceiling is lower than Magneto's. And so because of that, I can't rank her higher than, I would say, 4th. I think 4th is a reasonable place to put her. But yeah. And then we come to Strife. I think Strife is one of the last ones. Yep, along with Wasp. I think Strife is a top 10 contender. It's really, like, it's funny that it comes down to Strife and Wasp because they basically fill the same niche, which is giving that debuff passive to everyone on the team, which is super valuable for Otherworld Battle and also has relevance for other content. I think Strife overall is just a much stronger character than Wasp. So I think that's why he deserves to be in the top 10 and Wasp does not. But yeah, that's how my list plays out. Apologies for the little goof up there after I explained it to you guys. But yeah, Riri should have been 1st. Enchantress should have been 2nd. And then everybody else comes after that. The ranking doesn't really matter too much because they're not supposed to be ranked. But yeah, hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think. And more importantly, go vote. Thanks for watching. Smash the like button. Take care.